Talk about low-budget flights, no food or movies? I'm out of here. I like running better. Welcome back, YouTube viewers, to another video. So, Happy New Year, everyone. I'm very proud of my first year on YouTube, back in 2024, which is now over. I mean, it wasn't a full year, but almost a year. And you shouldn't expect any big changes for my channel this year. I mean, I'm just going through it. And that was only my first year, so it's not like anything huge has happened in between then. I just posted a few days ago. But anyway, to start off 2025, the year of Shadow has come to a close. So why not give it one last send-off by ranking almost every version of Shadow the Hedgehog? I was going to do this ever since I did my ranking every version of Silver, and yes, that was ranking every version, I think. That spoke anyway. This is ranking almost every version of Shadow. It's almost for a few reasons. One, I don't really know the story of Free Riders other than that apparently it's really bad, so I can't really comment on that version of the character. Or, yes, he does speak in Sonic Generations, but much like what I said about Silver in that game, what do you want me to say? He has 2 lines. And only one of his, what, 4 if you count the text boxes. And so I'm just ranking almost every version of Shadow. The ones that matter, the ones that I know of, which is probably 98% of them. So without further ado, let's rank almost every version of the Ultimate Life Form. Number 16. Surprising no one, it's IDW Shadow. Even people who like the IDW comics hate this version of the character. And why wouldn't you? He is just terrible. I'm sure you've all heard it a million times. But how am I going to dive into this? One, why is he just so aggressive? I understand that Shadow's a little colder, a little meaner, but he's just so over the top in this comic. He looks like he wants to murder everyone when he's in a fight, and then half the time in the comic he looks like he wants to kill someone, the other half he just looks super uninterested in everything. That's his entire character. These comics use more of the extended cast. They don't use the extended cast very well, might I add, but you never see him with Team Dark. It's always just with Rouge, and even when he's with Rouge, she's basically just there. They don't really have any kind of dynamic. Or, there's the cowards run, I win scene, which, that scene just sucks. That might be the worst scene in the entire comic, and that is really saying something. It might actually be worse than Sonic's philosophy. Sonic tells Shadow, hey, if you get touched by the metal zombies, you'll get infected with the metal virus. But hey, if you run a bunch, the virus won't fully consume you. And Shadow just says, cowards run, I win. And then he proceeds to punch the zombies that he knows are going to turn him into one of them. He just punches and kicks them. He has Chaos Spear. Doesn't hit them with that. Doesn't even try to run it off. No. He just basically willingly gets infected because he's an idiot too. It isn't enough that he's a huge out-of-character jerk. Moving on, we hate IDW Shadow. 15. Sonic Boom Shadow. I don't hate this version of the character, at least not as much as other people do, because 1, it being this alternate universe where everything is more exaggerated makes it a little less bad, and well, it's true that he really is just appalling in the Sonic Boom video games. In the Sonic Boom TV show, which is, the real meat of the franchise, one of the greatest TV shows ever made in my opinion. No, I'm serious. For that, I don't mind it because the show is pretty meta. The show is so over the top and wacky in its cartoony humor that Shadow acting the way he does in it doesn't really bother me. In fact, I think it might actually work better. In the series finale, Eggman just asks Sonic a bunch of questions about Shadow, and then he edits them in some really cheap way, shows it to Shadow, and makes Shadow super angry, and now he wants to beat up Sonic and his friends. And then he falls for it, and then he just goes to destroy Eggman's lair. Or how about in the Season 1 finale, where Eggman invites him there because he said, and when someone asks, who's that? Eggman shouts, only the second most popular character in the entire canon! Now you might be wondering, it sounds like you actually like Boom Shadow. Why is he so low then? Does that mean you like every other version of the character? No. Because at the end of the day, Funny as it is in the Boom TV show, he's still not a good Shadow. And in the Boom games, he's still pretty bad, so he has to go this low. Number 14, Shadow from his very first solo game. Shadow the Hedgehog is what began the second Dark Age of Sonic. If you're wondering, hey, isn't there only one Dark Age? No, the second Dark Age is what I mean. The period in between Sonic 3 and Knuckles and Sonic Adventure. There's just spin-offs, so it was basically a Dark Age because there was basically nothing good anyway. But anyway, yeah, this game not only began the second Dark Age of Sonic, it also began the franchise status as being an internet joke that it finally wouldn't shake off until about 2022, arguably not even until 2023 or even this year. But anyway, how is Shadow characterized in this game? Well, it just stinks. Much of what makes IDW Shadow so awful applies to this version. For example, the main point of the game is that choose Shadow's morality. He could be a hero, he could be a villain, he could be neutral. He can work for Gun and help Sonic. He could work for Black Doom, or he could work for himself. And it's just, what? Why? Shadow is a hero. You can say, but he has amnesia. He doesn't remember everything about Maria and all that. And so what? In the previous game, which leads into this one, Shadow's whole thing is that he may not remember anything about who he was, but he still acts like a hero because he likes his friends. That's just who he is. He's a little cold, but he's not a villain. So the fact that they even have that as an option is really stupid. The fact you have to play the game 10 times to get the last story. But regardless of that, it's just that the way he acts is just so bad. Like when he says, "This is like taking candy from a baby, which is fine by me." What? Or how about that? I'm pretty sure there are multiple endings where he just kills Sonic, or at least there's one of them. He kills Eggman in multiple endings. It's just, I don't. What am I supposed to get out of this? Or the fact that they could have had this game focus on Team Dark or something. Shadow, Rouge, Omega. They want to find the secrets to Shadow's past, and they end up finding about Black Doom and all that. That could have been interesting. But no, it's just Shadow is a loner, runs across the other characters occasionally, talks trash, and then this just beats up. Okay, I do like the ending of this game. There's some pretty good dialogue in the last story with them. I am Shadow the Hedgehog, and I've left the past behind me. No one can tell me what to do now. And 'tis the end to you, Black Doom, and the end to my accursed past. I mean, him going Super Shadow and getting to destroy the Black Comet with the Eclipse Cannon was pretty awesome, but even with all that, that's just a few bits. Throughout the game, he's just so insufferable. Oh, and I haven't even mentioned the fact that he swears in this game, and the gameplay is that he has a gun. It's just, I spent way too much time on this. Just, it stinks. 13. Team Sonic Racing Shadow. This version of Shadow isn't the worst. I mean, I like that he's actually there with Rouge and Omega, but he's still not very good either. He still has every problem that I've complained about before applies to this version. He's too aggressive, he's too mean, or I think one of the reasons people didn't like Kirk Thornton's Shadow voice, myself included, is that for so long, or let's say, yeah, Free Riders, Boom, Team Sonic, to a lesser extent, Team Sonic Racing and Sonic Forces, he has to sound so villainous. People say he sounds like a ghoul. But in Team Sonic Racing, he's there, I guess. He's just mean, and I don't care about this version of the character. Let's just move on. Number 12, Sonic X Shadow. Please do not take that the wrong way. Shadow from Sonic X. I don't. Okay, first things first, I have to say something I'm pretty sure I said in my video about the voice actors of the franchise, but I was never the biggest fan of Jason Griffith as Sonic or Shadow. I think he has some really good delivery, but overall, I'm not really that big a fan, and I think it's Sonic X. Okay, I know Jason Griffith, this was his first time he played these characters, but especially in the early episodes of Sonic X, Shadow just sounds like an edgy Sonic, and I could not shake that. Even when he did, Or when he did Shadow the Hedgehog, that's what he still sounded like. It wasn't until Sonic 06 where he finally started to sound unique. But regardless, okay, what about Sonic X? Shadow from Sonic X. Voice problems aside, it's just that. So first, it starts off in a pretty close adaptation of Sonic Adventure 2, and one thing I liked about him in that game, which we'll get to later, is that Shadow isn't heartless. He may be after revenge, but he's not. Even before he realizes the truth about Maria, he still isn't a huge jerk. He can be pretty mean, but it's mostly to his enemies. Here, he's just consistently mean for no reason. I mean, I guess I can understand it, but it just makes his whole remembering Maria's wish at the end it doesn't feel like it has much of an impact. Oh, and he's in season 3. I have not seen season 3 of Sonic X in years. There are a lot of things I didn't really like as a kid, or I guess I'm still a kid, but I didn't really like when I first saw Sonic X when I was around that age that I do like now, but or rather the opposite. But even then, so I thought when I watched Sonic X again in 2022, now that I'm older, maybe I'll be able to like Sonic X more. And no, I still didn't really like Sonic X. It was better, but it still wasn't that good. And I hated season 3 so much, I didn't even bother to rewatch it. So how was he in season 3? I don't remember. From what I do remember in the clips I've seen, he's basically just the same as he was in the SA2 adaptation. He's slightly nicer, but I don't know. I just do not care. Number 11, Shadow from Sonic Forces. Okay, this is definitely a little better. So, one, I like that Shadow's actually with Team Dark. After the day is saved at the end, you actually see him smile in the background, which is nice. His voice isn't as edgy as it was in the previous 2010s games and the following 2010s game. But the thing is, well, he is better and all that. He does actually seem to care about Rouge and Omega. He's still just not very good. I'm sure we all know "You are pathetic. Don't ever show your weak face around here again." Yeah, that really just is not good. But overall, he's not too bad in Forces. It was the first time Kirk Thor had actually got to sound a little less like a obnoxious villain and more like a character. But even still, he's just fine. Okay, number 10. Sonic Rivals Shadow. So, yeah, I included the Rivals games in my silver ranking, and so gotta include him here. So, Shadow's pretty good in the first Sonic Rivals. He's not great, but I like him. I like how he's just on a mission there to, stop Eggman Nega's plans, figure out what's going on and all that. Not much more to it than that. I like it. 9. Sonic Rivals 2. The reason I can put this above the first one is that, one, Sonic Rivals 2 has full voice acting, which I really appreciate. And two, there's just a little more here. I mean, his campaign is that he's paired with Metal Sonic of all characters, which is pretty interesting. Mix and match. We have such an extended cast. Nice to see him mix and match. And we still get to see him bounce off from the other characters pretty nicely. So yeah, I like Shadow and Sonic Rivals too. But there's still not much substance to that. Number 8, a little better. Okay, Shadow from the reboot of Archie Sonic. So, this version is pretty good. I like his character arc in Shadowfall, where he and Team Dark, as well as some other gun troopers, come across a Black Arms colony that seems to have survived the events of Shadow the Hedgehog. And Shadow is faced with the fact that he may hate the Black Arms because they're a bunch of evil alien conquerors and all that, but at the end of the day, he is still technically part Black Arms. So he's just wondering. There's a scene where he asks Omega, being that you were created by the Doctor, did you ever feel a little uncomfortable destroying his other robots? Because he's wondering, yeah, I have to destroy the Black Arms and all, but I'm still kind of Black Arms, sort of. So he's a little uncomfortable with it. And he meets Eclipse the Darkling. He gets mind controlled by Black Death. I'm pretty sure that was originally supposed to be Black Doom, and that the story is supposed to be about Black Doom and Mephiles, but then Sega made Ian Flynn change it, so it became about Black Death, who is basically just Black Doom, and Eclipse, an original character, which definitely that worked out in the end. But yeah, Shadow breaks free of his mind control, though, has an epic battle with Black Death. He talks about how you devour worlds and call yourself righteous. I will save the planet and people that Maria loved unconditionally. Nice scene. He also gets to bounce off his team, which is nice. Then there's also the sequel to that story, Total Eclipse, where he gets to fight Knuckles. That was cool. This version of Shadow is more plot than character, but for what is there, it's actually quite good, and I did like those plots, so I have to put him here. Number 7, Shadow from Dark Beginnings. So, you may be thinking, wow, you must love every version of Shadow from here on out, and I mean, I don't love... Okay, this is a great version of the character, but the reason I can't put him any higher is because Dark Beginnings is just a 12-minute short film, or a series of 3 short films, but 3 shorts. But yeah, it's just good as he is here. There isn't enough to justify me putting him any higher. Yeah, I love the flashback with Maria. I like seeing him work together with his team. I absolutely love his whole panic attack thing where he starts having flashes of Maria in his head and he starts yelling, "Stop it! That life was taken from me long ago." That's a phenomenal scene. I'm sure we all talked about Dark Beginnings to death by now, but yeah, to restate it, Dark Beginnings isn't long enough for me to justify this placement being any higher. Number 6, Shadow from Sonic Heroes. His second appearance, but I guess, yeah, I think this was before Sonic X Season 2. But yeah, so, Shadow's really good in Heroes. Everyone thinks he died at the end of SA2 because he was intended to die and that was thought to be the last Sonic game. Of course, that wasn't the last Sonic game and Shadow was so popular they had to bring him back. But since Heroes was written by the same guy as SA2, even though Heroes is a lot more lighthearted, he did seem to have, story integrity in mind with his characters. So when Shadow's brought back, it's Rouge is looking for Eggman's secret treasure and finds Shadow the Hedgehog in a capsule guarded by Omega. When she frees him and Omega starts shooting at her, Shadow's first instinct is to save her. Yeah, what a selfish jerk, am I right? So throughout the game, just Shadow has amnesia. In SA2, while his memories of Maria's final wish were warped, he still remembered everything about his past. But here it's no, he literally remembers nothing. Am I the biggest fan of the amnesia story? No, not really, but I think in Heroes it's handled pretty well. So, yeah. He is working with Rouge and Omega on a quest to find Eggman so he can learn about his past. And halfway through the game, he finds that Eggman has a whole bunch of Shadow androids. So he's wondering, if he's a bunch of Shadow androids, am I even the real Shadow? And of course, we know he is because, duh, why would they make you play as a Shadow android? And 2, it's just that, hey, maybe you think the original Shadow would be locked, wouldn't be separated from all the androids. It wouldn't be. He's not being mass produced. He is locked away by himself, being guarded by Eggman's most powerful robot. And even though he has amnesia, it seems that Rouge did fill him out on some of what's going on, since he says, "Some things never change, do they?" Also, Shadow's best voice actor is David Humphrey, his very first one. This is the last time he played the character until Sonic and Tails R Episode X, which came out this year. So, as his final official performance, he did a really good job. Yeah, I don't really have a ton else to say. I just really like this version of Shadow. And I do love his lines right before Egg Fleet, where he says, "Doctor, even if I'm not real, I'm still the ultimate life form, Shadow the Hedgehog." Yeah. Top 5. Here are the ones that I actually do really like. Oh, love, I guess. Shadow from Sonic 06. No, he's not number 2 or number 1, he's only number 5. But he's still really good. We all know this story by now. Shadow accidentally unleashes, well, I guess not really his fault, but Mephiles the Dark is unleashed upon the world. He taunts Shadow about all that. He's saying how, yeah, you may have overcome all your past traumas, but hey, in the future, the world's gonna turn against you. Everyone's gonna want your head, and Omega's gonna be the one to capture you too. Join me and we can take revenge upon the world. But Shadow has had enough development throughout the past few games to be able to say, no way. That's absurd. I determine my own destiny. Yeah. I like that Shadow doesn't really ever consider joining Mephiles. He may be a little messed up in the mind, but overall, he's never gonna take that to heart. He is a hero at the end of the day. He sticks by his friends. He's not gonna join some crazy world conqueror. People like his sort of mentor uh relationship to Silver, mentor student, which isn't that well explored, but yeah, I think it's interesting for what there is of that. Um, I think what holds his story back for me though is that as I already said before, I'm not the biggest fan of Jason Griffith's Shadow, and that wouldn't be a huge problem if not for the fact that the cutscenes in '06 outside of the CGI cutscenes are not well animated. I understand that there was huge time constraints with '06. I'm sure we all know that by now, but when you combine that with the fact that it seems even the voice acting was rushed, it just combines to create an experience that has a really solid script, but not that the acting is not solid enough to back it up. Still absolutely loved his final scene though, with the iconic "If the world chooses to become my enemy, I will fight like I always have." And he takes off his inhibitor rings, which is a reference to Sonic X, I guess. Cool. Still a great version of Shadow. I love his character here. Number 4, Shadow from Sonic Movie 3. Wow, did this surprise me. I already talked about him in my review of Sonic 3, which you should totally watch, but yeah, I just was really surprised by this version of the character. I did not like those first two Sonic movies. I've made that pretty clear by now, especially that second one. So even though the trailers did look really good, I did not have high expectations for this version of Shadow. And then I also really did not want Keanu Reeves to play the character. And once we heard that movie 3 DLC, I had even less optimism that this would turn out well, but no. Keanu Reeves gave a stellar performance here. And the actual writing of the character is really solid. I love the flashbacks with Maria. They really do. I, of course, already care about Shadow's story with Maria. Well, it's true that this is a separate version of the character, so why should you care? But I still probably would anyway, because I already know this story like the back of my hand. But yeah, the movie for new viewers who don't know that story of SA2 does give you a reason to care about Shadow. Like one specific part, like from the flashbacks where he's watching that movie with Maria with what looks like the Bio Lizard is one of those old Japanese monster movies, and he's asking Maria, "Do you think I'm a monster?" After all, he is an alien in this universe that crashed from a meteorite, which is weird, but whatever. And then combined with the fact that he has these weird powers and all that, just can't really blame him. But he's told that no, he's not a monster. Because the whole his story about wanting to take revenge because of Maria's death is handled super well. Because while it's true that he does want revenge for for Gunn killing Maria, he really wouldn't take things that far. He's asking Gerald, "Hey, do you really think Maria would have wanted us to wipe out the entire human race?" And he says, "No, Shadow, we gotta do this. Maria's life doesn't mean anything if we don't kill everyone." And he's just motivated by that revenge throughout the whole runtime of the film. And he has that epic fight with Sonic, and he's able to just come past that. His revenge will not get him anywhere. Remembers what Maria, and that even he comparison to the whole thing Maria told him about, even when the star is gone, its light still shines. And that same is contrasted with Sonic, who lost his adopted mother when he was a kid, that even though Maria's gone, her love is still always going to be there, just like the light of the star. That is really beautiful. And the entire when both those scenes happened, I could just not. The entire time I was just thinking of Shadow Generations, Dark Beginnings. Well, both, but yeah. Also, this version of Shadow is funny, but they don't just make jokes at his expense that butcher the character. They're just genuinely solid humor. It's genuinely solid humor. I love Shadow in this movie. I'm really excited to see where he goes next, and I really hope they don't give him amnesia. Number 3, the top 3, the cream of the crop. Shadow from Shadow Generations. Yeah. So, first things first, Kirk Thornton killed it here. Everyone's talked about that, and it's totally well deserved. He did a great job in Dark Beginnings, and it carried over to this. As it's been noticed that his voice, between say Boom and this aren't that far off, but just the subtleties in the difference of the performance really sell it. He no longer sounds like an actor trying to do some over the top voice. He just sounds like a character. I don't hear Kirk Thornton doing a voice. I hear Shadow. And also the cutscenes are really well animated and all that, which definitely helps. But the script, the most important part, is just really good. Shadow is just he doesn't come to Sonic's birthday party because he's some huge jerk or whatever. That's not why he doesn't come. He doesn't come because he's on a mission for Gun. He wants to, and when he sees toward the Ark and all that, it really just starts to get to him. He sees that Black Doom is behind everything, and he's saying that, yeah, I destroyed you once and I'll do it again. Shadow doesn't seem that phased. I mean, he does seem a little messed up since, he's going back to the Ark and all that, but then because of the time travel shenanigans, he sees Gerald and Maria again. These aren't projections of them or anything, that is actually Gerald and Maria. And he starts to think that it's them, the family he lost. But he's thinking, maybe I can somehow use chaos control to stop time and save them. And okay, that's an element I think could have used an extra cutscene or two, because it doesn't come up until the very end when they're fading away from existence, going back to their point in time, but it's still handled really well. Because this game's story is not a rehash like some people say. I say this game's story works in the way that a lot of other people say, which is that part of the reason Shadow's character is so different post Heroes and Shadow 05, I guess, is that Shadow's story in 05 wasn't about accepting his past, remembering it and moving on. It was, no, he's just saying, this was traumatic, I'm going to forget this ever happened, it doesn't matter. And because he forgot Maria's wish and all of that, that's what made him slowly become bitter. That's the reason why he acts the way he does in Forces and well, I guess that's actually afterward because of the timeline and all that, but okay, let's just say that's the reason why he acts the way he does in Free Riders, or even in the beginning of Dark Beginnings in this game where he's still a little rough, is because his mission was just to forget his whole past. His story here is about learning that you can't let the past haunt you, but you can't forget it ever happened either. You need to balance it. And because he's able to come to that balance, he's able to let Gerald and Maria finally go. He'll still miss them, of course, but as long as he holds them in his heart, he'll always have them. And he sheds a single tear. Hasn't done that since the end of SA2. That is just so good. Also, he still has that cool factor that is part of Shadow's character. The whole, I don't know who you are, but I'll destroy you all the same. And there's no future for you. Ever. And of course, the whole confrontation with Black Doom at the final boss. Everything about the, time to sever this bond between us. Forever. As Black Doom has him in his grasp as Neo Devil Doom. And he starts yelling about how, you cannot deny what you are! We are one and the same! And Shadow says, I am nothing like you. I am Shadow the Hedgehog, and this is the destiny I choose! And he destroys him once and for all. Now that's Shadow the Hedgehog, without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah, this is just a great version of the character. And I remember seeing Char I5's pretty popular video before the game released, which was the Sonic and Shadow Generations will change this line, which was, you've got this, Sonic. Because now him saying that to Sonic right before the final boss of Sonic Generations is not just a, hey, yeah, you've got this. It's him saying, I've been able to go through so much, just literally this same day, I guess, or recently, whatever. You're going to be able to get through this too. Which is more apparent in the rewrite where he says, on your feet. He's not prepared to see another partner go down. Really solid character work. Yeah. Too bad we don't get some real interaction between him and Omega, but still, great version of the character. He is back. But number two have to be Shadow from Sonic Adventure 2, his debut. So, Despite the fact that this is Shadow's origin, so it's mostly based on how well do you think his origin was handled, it's handled so well. As I mentioned before, part of the reason Shadow's whole redemption at the end works is that Shadow doesn't instantly go from some huge villain to I need to save the world. It's he wanted revenge not because he was evil, but because his memories were warped to think that's what my best friend wanted me to do before she died. I have to fulfill her promise. And once he realizes that that's not what she wanted, he instantly goes to fulfill her real wish. He saves Rouge from the Prison Island's explosion. Well, he does justify to himself that it was only to save the Chaos Emeralds. Right before he does it, he starts having flashes of Maria in his head, realizing that he doesn't want another person in his life to die. I love his rivalry with Sonic in this game. I like the cinematography they put into it. When he first sees him, Shadow is way high above Sonic on the top of the building. As he says, "There's no time for games. Farewell!" He does chaos control, and while Sonic is just running across the ground, Shadow's, I guess, teleporting, so he's not even touching the ground. He's just floating above it basically. Or during the iconic Faker scene, he's once again standing above Sonic. And when he thinks Sonic dies in Eggman's trap, he says, "Huh, I guess he was just a hedgehog after all." But then once he sees that Sonic has survived, they're both standing at on the exact same floor, equal to each other. As he now views him as an actual worthy rival, he says, "You never cease to surprise me, Blue Hedgehog. So, there's more to you than just looking like me. Just what are you, anyway?" And then his death at the end, it's handled really well. Again, David Humphrey nailed his performance as Shadow. It's a real shame he never got to really play the character again after Heroes. So yeah, his story here is handled super well, and it's a reason not only was he so popular, he was popular enough to be brought back, but the reason he's gotten his own solo game and has been so overwhelmingly popular, because his story in SA2 came out 23 years ago, and we're still talking about it. It really did leave an impression on people. And I think it's good, and for people who didn't play SA2 but are instead getting introduced to him through Shadow Generations or the third movie, they are also seeing a really good interpretation of his original story. And I'm sure it's going to stick with them just as much as this story stuck with so many people. But of course, even with all that praise, this isn't the best version of Shadow. You probably saw this coming. Number one is pre-reboot Archie Sonic Shadow. I could just tell you, watch Low Art's video why Archie Shadow is the best Shadow, because, yeah, it's only 15 minutes, something like that. Tells you everything you need to know. But in short, everything that is good about the other versions of the character apply here. But since this comic was able to give a lot of depth to the game characters and had a lot more time with them, you're really able to dive into his psyche, I suppose. Because we see Shadow confront Gerald and Maria just like he does in Shadow Generations. With a scene, the ending of that game is clearly inspired by that issue, because Ian Flynn wrote both. Maria and Gerald disappearing into a white void, and she tells him that he'll always have her in his heart and all that. It's handled better, but whatever. And so Shadow knows that, hey, I was created by Professor Gerald Robotnik to save the world and defeat Black Doom, who never actually shows up because Sega wouldn't allow Black Doom to appear, but also they come up with some in-story justification for the fact that the Black Arms are so busy warring with the Zord that they're never going to show up to Earth anyway. So yeah, but since Shadow does know his purpose now, it almost haunts him. He says that, "I am the ultimate life form. I was built to be perfect. I'm not supposed to fail." It gets to him. He thinks he must be perfect and do everything exactly right. And he realizes that he can't do that, but that doesn't mean he's a failure. As he says, trusting in your friends and family was not a failure, Hope. Because yeah, we do get to see the origin of his teaming up with Rouge and Omega, and it's handled really well. I like Team Dark's banter dynamic in here. The comic gives the justification for why Shadow would join Gun, which also can work for 06, which is the fact that Shadow's whole mission is to protect the world, and he's going to have a much easier time doing that at Gun. He'll have a place to rest, a place to gather information. He'll have quicker transport. But also, specifically, I guess it could also work for both stories, is that it says in the Sonic Comic Encyclopedia, He works to ensure the gun of today is nothing like the gun of his past. That's a good reason, I'd say, too. After all, they are called the guardian units of the nations. What else? The artwork is killer, so that really helps. I like the stories. I already covered this in the video, the most underrated Sonic story of all time. Surely watch that video I made. He talks about he sees him since he was created to save the world. He sees himself as a living weapon. So he tries to talk to other living weapons like Metal Sonic and Gamma and Omega. He wants them to not turn out the way he doesn't want them to turn out poorly. He says to Metal Sonic, "You may have been created as a tool for the Doctor. That's all he sees you as. You can reject him, become more than what you were programmed to be." Metal Sonic just says, "I was built to destroy you and to serve Eggman. That's what I'm gonna do." It's just so much is poured into this version of the character, but it also shows how, as Lowart said, in a way he works for Maria. He is so obsessed with his idea of being the ultimate life form, fulfilling her wish, that when it's the whole Treasure Team Tango story, when he's saying, "Hey, I'm working for Gun now, and Gun wants the Soul Emerald. Maria asked me to protect the world. If Gun can use the Soul Emerald to help protect the world, I'm gonna take it." I'm and he tells Blaze, "Yeah, I know you need that Soul Emerald and all that, but my mission and my world come first." And she's telling him, "If you my world is gonna die without it, and if you really are don't or you really are gonna go through with your mission, why are you trying to apologize to me?" And Amy's telling him, "Hey, if you want to protect the world, why do you need that Soul Emerald so much? Why don't if you do take it, Blaze's world will die. Why don't you just protect both worlds?" And so that's what he does. He's able to break free of the chains of his past, but he's still able to remember his promise to Maria and all that good stuff. In conclusion, this was way longer than I thought it would be. I guess there's just so much to say about Shadow as a character in each different version of him that it just had to be this. So yeah, I really enjoyed making this. Fun send off to the Year of Shadow. I look forward to see what comes next for the character and the franchise as a whole. Remember to stay way past cool.